The creatures of Mount Nyangani. Being one of the most recent and peculiar mysteries from the past few years is the encounter witnessed atop Mount Nyangani in Zimbabwe. Back in the month of November of 2014, a 20-year-old British explorer named Thomas Gaisford journeyed to explore Mount Nyangani in the hopes of finding sights never before seen. The main cause for him being in Zimbabwe was due to him having won a university award that was focused on helping pay for trips to new and exciting locations to help with building confidence and discovering new and exciting things about the world. Unfortunately, this trip only provided the opposite effect for Thomas Gaisford. As he went to trek the mountain alone, he had planned to reach the peak and stay there overnight. However, at roughly 3 a.m, a thick fog began rolling in, which left him disoriented and lost. He decided to sit still and camp overnight where he was until the weather cleared up, but he was only met with a thunderstorm that soon arrived at his location. It was at this point that things started getting especially strange. In the fog surrounding him, Thomas Gaisford reported that creatures were circling him and observing him. He had already been warned by the locals to ignore any animals that were acting strangely on the mountain, as the locals explained they were simply not from this world. When the weather finally cleared after 24 hours, he rapidly fled the mountain and never returned. Although some claim that perhaps the amateur explorer had merely gotten dehydrated and became disoriented, locals agree with what he experienced, and not many outside of the local population have ever journeyed up the mountain since then. Perhaps there truly are animals from another dimension on that mountain, and there simply has not been enough who have tried to understand the mountain's peculiar properties to report this finding. For centuries, locals have passed down stories of strange beings that inhabit the misty peaks and hidden valleys of Mount Nyangani. Described as tall, slender figures with glowing eyes and elongated limbs, these mysterious humanoid creatures are said to lurk in the shadows, watching and waiting for unsuspecting travelers who dare to venture too close to their domain. One of the earliest documented encounters with these mysterious humanoid creatures occurred in the late 19th century, when a group of European explorers stumbled upon a remote village nestled in the foothills of Mount Nyangani. According to their accounts, the villagers spoke of strange sightings of humanoid figures lurking in the darkness, their presence evoking a sense of fear and unease among the local population. In the decades that followed, reports of encounters with the mysterious humanoid creatures of Mount Nyangani continued to trickle in, with witnesses describing eerie sightings of tall, shadowy figures that seemed to materialize out of thin air, only to vanish without a trace moments later. Some claim to have seen the creatures stalking through the dense undergrowth, their glowing eyes piercing the darkness like beacons of malevolent intent. One such encounter occurred in 1979, when a group of hikers exploring the remote reaches of Mount Nyangani reported seeing a humanoid figure emerge from the mist, its tall, slender form silhouetted against the backdrop of the setting sun. According to their accounts, the creature appeared to be observing them from a distance, its glowing eyes following their every move with an air of detached curiosity. As word of these sightings spread, interest in the mysterious humanoid creatures of Mount Nyangani grew. One theory proposed by researchers is that the mysterious humanoid creatures of Mount Nyangani may be related to the rich tradition of folklore and mythology that surrounds the mountain. According to indigenous beliefs, the mountain is inhabited by ancestral spirits and guardian beings who are said to possess supernatural powers and wisdom beyond mortal comprehension. It is possible that the sightings of humanoid creatures reported on the mountain are manifestations of these ancient spirits, appearing to those who dare to intrude upon their sacred domain. Another theory suggests that the mysterious humanoid creatures of Mount Nyangani may be a previously undiscovered species of primate or hominid, adapted to life in the dense forests and rugged terrain of the mountain. Proponents of this theory point to the mountain's remote and inaccessible location as a possible refuge for such creatures, allowing them to evade detection and remain hidden from prying eyes. Yet, despite the wealth of speculation and debate surrounding the mysterious humanoid creatures of Mount Nyangani, the truth behind these strange encounters remains elusive. Whether real or imagined, these sightings serve as a potent reminder of the enduring allure and mystery of the natural world and the boundless wonders that await discovery in the remote corners of our planet. Girl taken from Montana mountain range by mysterious creature. Considered to be one of the most bizarre missing cases ever recorded, a 1-year-old female would suddenly go missing in the state of Montana, back on the 2nd of September 1903, and would later be discovered with the creature responsible inside a cave located in one of the most isolated hills of North America. According to the report, a man by the name of William Dunphy was prospecting with his family roughly 10 miles north of Wyoming, only a few miles outside of the small town of Ewing, Montana. Today, Ewing is considered a ghost town, as the less than 200 residential population recorded back in the early 1900s has completely disappeared, and only a single building, used to house local park rangers, stands where the small town once stood. Surrounding the remains of the small town are some of the largest mountains found in the state, alongside several of the highest recorded peaks. Entering into the direction of Ewing from the border of Wyoming is also home to an old supernatural location referred to by locals as the Devil's Canyon, as many ancient Native American legends tell stories of encountered demonic entities in the area. It would be in this area that William Dunphy's daughter would suddenly go missing. On the 2nd of September, back in 1903, an article from a local newspaper would claim that while the Dunphy family were living in the nearby hills of Ewing, the parents and children would often travel deeper into the nearby canyons to do prospecting, using the nearby small rivers and tributaries for gold panning. The local newspaper, known as the Clinton Morning, would claim that while the family was prospecting and the child was lying down near one of the slow-moving tributaries, a sudden, large and wild animal would emerge from the adjacent brush and carry off the daughter. Oddly enough, the family was unable to tell investigators or reporters what exactly that animal was that was responsible for carrying off the daughter. Regardless of this, the family and other local residents would begin an extensive search to find the missing daughter, including hunting and gutting local wild animals of all kinds to find identifiable remains of the Dunphy daughter. Although the news articles failed to provide information on the exact efforts that local volunteers made, the entire operation was considered by reporters as having been extensive and time-consuming. Almost 2 weeks would pass before any sign of the missing girl was ever uncovered, but during the middle of September, William Dunphy would once again be near the Devil's Canyon, following large predator tracks to a deep and open cave system. The region surrounding Ewing is littered with complex cave systems, often undiscovered and unexplored, and many of these caves are often closed off or avoided altogether due to the high probability of natural large predators inhabiting them. Despite these fears, William Dunphy would follow the large animal tracks through the canyon and up one of the mountains until he came to a large cave opening that was located more than 10 miles from where the Dunphy daughter had last been seen. Believing the spot to have been a wolf's den, William Dunphy would stay outside of the cave for about an hour, waiting to see if any large predators would come out of the cave. While waiting, however, Dunphy would claim to suddenly hear the crying of a young child. Without hesitation, Dunphy would soon enter the den to check what was inside it, and would claim that the cry of the child would become much louder and was mixed with the yelping cries of animals. Dunphy would later tell reporters that he felt as if he had seen a ghost when he entered the cave and saw his infant daughter lying on top of a fluffed-up and organized bed of grass, as if it had been specifically made for the child. Less than a few inches away from his infant daughter laid a massive wolf mother with several young wolf pups laying beside her. Dunphy, terrified to get too close to the nursing wolf mother, watched as his daughter would crawl to the large wolf mother and get milk from the mother while pushing away other small pups. After a moment, Dunphy would step forward slowly towards the wolf mother, which had no reaction whatsoever, and grabbed his crying daughter away from the wolf mother and slowly backed out of the cave. Other local residents and newspaper reporters would visit the wolf den to help confirm the story, as well as examine the Dunphy daughter closely. After examinations, it became apparent that not only was the girl not injured, but that she had grown to a considerable size and had been extremely well nourished, better than many of the other children her age. Several other newspapers, both in Red Lodge, Montana and Ewing, would have the story validated by 3 different Ewing residents, alongside the witness testimony of William Dunphy. Although no other details surrounding the disappearance and recovery of the Dunphy daughter are known, many opinion pieces later written about the publication often expressed criticism or disbelief at the claims of William Dunphy. However, Despite these skeptic views, since the 1903 disappearance, there have been a handful of cases from around the world of children vanishing after being taken by a large predator animal, only to be seen at a later time well-fed and acting feral, similar to the animals. Oddly enough, the case of the Dunphy daughter is not the only time an individual was reportedly taken by an animal described by eyewitness reports as a large bear or abnormally massive wolf, as mammals taking children has been a common report across the state of Montana. Another similar case would be the account of missing Kenneth Crandall, who was believed to have been taken by a large dog and then later found by Crandall's missing family dog. The strange disappearance of Eric Lewis on Mount Rainier. On the 1st of July back in 2010, a man by the name of Eric Lewis would suddenly go missing while visiting Mount Rainier, located in the state of Washington, while he was on a routine hiking trip through the national park. The most peculiar facts about the case of his disappearance seem to arise when taking the hiker's years of experience into account. Despite having been an experienced hiker and sheer rock face climber of more than 2 decades, Lewis would appear to completely vanish from the top of Mount Rainier while following simple hiking trails that thousands of tourists journey on every year. The details surrounding Eric Lewis's disappearance would be considered so strange that local law enforcement agencies would temporarily pursue a suspicion of foul play before ending the case as nothing more than an unexplainable vanishing. According to the details of Eric's case, Eric Lewis was a native resident of the small town of Duval, located in the state of Washington. Friends of Eric Lewis often referred to him as the climbing fanatic, as it was more than common to find the 57-year-old man conquering yet another mountain's peak. Close friends and family members would later tell investigators that Eric Lewis had conquered far more difficult summits in Nepal, New Zealand and Argentina, and had already reached Mount Rainier's summit 10 times in the recent past. Eric's love for the outdoors and climbing would eventually be the catalyst for his permanent residency being the small town of Duval, as he would later tell his family that he had wanted to move out to the small town after his first few visits to Mount Rainier and to ultimately be closer to the Cascade Mountains, of which he had become greatly familiar with on his frequent expeditions. More than just a hobby, climbing and hiking was also a side profession that Eric Lewis was interested in pursuing. After graduating from the University of Missouri at Columbia with a bachelor's degree in fine arts, Eric hoped to pursue his degree's speciality in photography. Collections of photographs Eric had taken while reaching the summits of some of the most difficult mountains in the world would gain him a small following in the climbing community and would help to propel him to a status among the top 1% of climbers in the world. Interestingly enough, Eric's love for the sport and his obsession with photography did not prevent him from taking the necessary precautions in the least. Eric's mother would later tell investigators that, if anything, Eric had grown increasingly more cautious over the years after learning of other disappearances across national parks from experienced outdoorsmen and individuals who had underprepared. This growing caution would lead Eric to establishing his climbing rituals, one of which included calling his mother, who lived back in Omaha, Nebraska, every Saturday, to give her a summary of his detailed climbing and hiking itinerary for the following week, and to check in with her to make sure he was safe. He would also tell his mother that if he ever forgets to call her, she must immediately contact a search party to begin a search and rescue using his planned itinerary to help locate where he may be. Additionally, Eric would spend a day in preparation for his hikes, including checking the quality of his gear, making a list of all of the equipment he would need, and packing extra food and water in the event of an emergency. Lastly, Eric Lewis never traveled alone, as he always had a collection of hiking and climbing friends ready to adventure with him whenever he was ready. Many of these friends were also experienced outdoorsmen, including Don Storm Jr. and Trevor Lane, who would accompany Eric on the day of his disappearance. According to the report, the 3 men left for Mount Rainier's summit, expecting to take a different route than usual, known as the Gibraltar Ledge, sometime in the early morning of July 1st. Weather forecasts for the day showed that the area would have pristine weather over the course of the week, which gave the 3 men enough time to ascend the mountain's side up to around 14,000 feet in as little as a few hours. Given the fact that the men were not loaded down with any heavy equipment, the initial 10,000 feet were treated more like a casual hike than a heavy climb, and the 3-man team made incredible time ascending up the mountain's slope. However, oddly enough, at around the 14,000-foot mark, the weather started to take a dramatic turn for the worse, including a sudden snowstorm that blew over the three men in a heavy blizzard, seemingly out of nowhere. By this point in the expedition, Don Storm Jr. was leading the team of men and began to worry that Trevor Lane was falling too far behind. Fearing that Trevor could get lost in the snowstorm, the Don Storm and Eric Lewis roped together onto a main line and waited for Trevor Lane to get closer to where they were at, so that all of them could connect onto a single rope line to not get lost. In only the span of a few minutes, the blizzard suddenly grew to such a state that the men would later claim to investigators that they were unable to see more than 3 to 5 feet in front of them. After some time, Trevor Lane would reappear on the route and make it over to Don Storm Jr.'s position, connecting his carabiner to the main line rope of his two climbing friends. Throughout this time, Don Storm Jr. would catch glimpses of Eric Lewis resting nearby, still attached to the line as they waited. Once the three men were all together, Eric Lewis started to continue the climb, and Don would remark that he caught several more glimpses of Eric on the rope and travelling up the slope slowly. After about an hour of the three men walking together, however, Don Storm Jr. noticed the rope leading to Eric Lewis suddenly went limp. Although Don would later remark that the limpness in the rope would make him worry, at first he claimed that he was just confused. Had the rope tugged violently and then went limp, he would have assumed that Eric Lewis' carabiner connected to the rope had broken. However, the suddenly limpness of the rope without any strain or jerking motion made it appear as if Eric Lewis had merely detached his carabiner from the main rope connecting his two climbing partners. For the next few minutes, Don Storm Jr. would call out to Eric Lewis, following in the direction of the limp rope, and would make his way towards Eric's last known direction. After pulling the rope closer and travelling a few feet, Don Storm Jr. would find the end of the rope in a looped knot, but missing any form of climbing harness or carabiner, confirming his theory that Eric must have purposefully disconnected his carabiner for some unknown reason. Worried that Eric Lewis could have gotten lost in the storm and unknowingly wandered away from the group after disconnecting his carabiner, the two men decided to travel back to where they had been when the rope had gone slack and begin their search around the area for any sign of Eric Lewis before doing anything else. After scouring the region for over an hour, the two men discovered a strange outcropping at the 13,800-foot elevation marked on their maps. Entering the bizarre outcropping, the men realized that the small outcropping was actually a fully carved-out snow cave that went far deeper than they originally expected. The snow cave appeared to have been an opening carved out of the old compacted snow, slightly larger than a person, and back into the mountain for quite some ways. Initially, the two men believed that the snow cave could have originally been carved out by Eric Lewis while waiting for his friends to find him, but that he must have left the carved pocket sometime within the hour or so of his disappearance. Following in the direction directly beneath the snow cave, the two men reached another ledge at around the 13,600-foot mark, where they found and recovered several pieces of Eric's hiking and climbing equipment, including a packed backpack, a snow shovel, a climbing harness, and several pristine carabiners. It was due to this discovery that Don Storm and Trevor Lane became greatly disturbed and believed that Eric may have been suffering from hypothermia due to the cold temperatures and acting erratically. Immediately after discovering the abandoned equipment, the two men began searching in a large radius for any signs or tracks of Eric Lewis anywhere nearby, believing that perhaps Eric had attempted to find some shelter from the blizzard. Unfortunately for the two men, the snowstorm appeared to have wiped out any footprints, as there was no sign of tracks anywhere in the area. Fearing the worst, Don and Trevor would then descend to around 10,000 feet, where they could contact the local climbing rangers and report that Eric Lewis had disappeared at around 14,000 feet, and the exact GPS location of where he had last been seen and where some of his equipment had been recovered. Within a few hours of the report, the climbing rangers would soon visit the site of where Eric had last been seen, as well as trace the route all the way up to the summit of the mountain, but were unable to find him. Knowing that Eric's equipment had been found separated, the rangers believed that he must have been lost and sheltered somewhere, hoping for travelers to find his equipment and pinpoint his location. Using the area of where his equipment had been recovered, the rangers collected a search and rescue team of more than 50 volunteers, 2 Park Service helicopters, and commercial guides to begin searching for Eric Lewis. Although the rangers originally had high hopes of locating Eric Lewis, knowing his vast experience with climbing and the recovery of his equipment left completely undamaged, this relaxed atmosphere would soon turn into fear. Due to the sudden, unexpected snowstorm, helicopters had difficulty staying in the air for very long, and previously searched areas had to be covered several times over due to the changing landscape. As temperatures plummeted, search and rescue volunteers had to slow their efforts until the weather could clear and the daylight came back. After a total of 4 days searching for Eric Lewis, not a single sign of him was uncovered, leading to the search and rescue efforts being called off by the climbing rangers due to the increasingly bad weather. After listening to the witness testimony of Eric's 2 climbing partners, the investigators assumed that Eric must have fallen from the side of the mountain and that his equipment must have been dislodged from his person as he fell, landing in a far different area. The official explanation for Eric Lewis's disappearance, however, is still considered to be unknown, and no sign of Eric Lewis had been recovered at any point following his disappearance. Despite many of the strange theories surrounding Eric's disappearance, none have been able to explain the bizarre appearance of the mysterious snow cave carved into the side of the mountain and then abandoned in such a short span of time. Additionally, had Eric carved the snow cave himself, why would he later abandon his equipment while still being more than 13,000 feet up the mountain's slope over a couple hundred feet below him? Even more peculiar, no other sign of Eric Lewis was recovered when the snow melted many months later. Given the many impossible-to-explain disappearances on the slopes of Mount Rainier, it is difficult to know what exactly could have been the cause of Eric's demise, despite having been amongst one of the top 1% of experienced climbers in the world. Mysterious encounter in the mountains. The owner and caretaker of an alpine lodge observed an unidentified flying object in the scenic Hochkreuz Mountains of Germany in December 1973. This was the end of a year that saw a boom in reports of UFO sightings and humanoid occupants all over the world. Around 8:30 in the evening on December 10, 1973, the owner of the Alpine Lodge, referred to as Mr. L in the report, though Friedrich Lennartz is listed in UFO files, and Peter Zettel, the property's caretaker, were enjoying the breathtaking view of the snow-covered landscape through the equally impressive panoramic window of their charming building. Even though it was many kilometers away, the 1,600-meter-tall Weitlahner Kopf mountain was the main feature in this image. But on this specific occasion, the 2 men noticed an odd red light on top of the mountain, or hovering over it. At first, they thought it was a helicopter, so they tried to check this by reaching for their binoculars. Upon observing the red light for almost half an hour and continuing to think it was a helicopter's cockpit light, Lennartz would shoot red flares into the air outside the property. At the time, he reasoned that if the helicopter's pilot was having problems, the flare would alert them to the presence of help nearby. That being said, the object seemed to react shortly after he shot the flare, and not in the manner that the witness would have thought a helicopter would. It rose up into the air, stopped, and hovered at around 200 meters above the ground while it started to glow a richer, deeper red color, and then the mysterious object started to move towards them. Based on his current understanding, the witness estimated that the object was around 2 miles away, and it was definitely not a helicopter. Furthermore, it had a translucent upper dome and was unmistakably egg-shaped, and there were whirling, flashing lights around the underbelly that seemed to move and flash at random. Lennartz would remember that the lights turned anti-clockwise and that they did so without any apparent system. He would also remember how the lights looked like fluorescent tubes when they flashed, and what fascinated the 2 men the most was how completely silent the craft was. Because of their location near the country's southern border, Lennartz had maintained communication with mountain rescue agencies in both Czechoslovakia and Austria, particularly when the thing seemed to be heading towards the Klausenberg mountain, which is located outside the Austrian border. For a brief moment, it seemed to hover right over the summit of the mountain. The mysterious object started moving again after a short while, this time in the direction of the Klausner Lodge, which lies nearby. Lennartz would communicate via radio with the building's owner to inform them of the unusual object hanging over the top of the structure for a while, and it so happened that they had also been watching the thing. An article in the Washington Post said that on December 4th, when darkness descended over Turin, thousands of people would see a massive object just hovering overhead and corroborating radar sightings would again originate from the nearby military base, same like the sighting from 4 nights earlier. For centuries, the Hockeries Mountains have been steeped in folklore and legend, with tales of strange lights and mysterious phenomena dating back to ancient times. According to local lore, the mountains are said to be inhabited by spirits and otherworldly beings who are said to watch over the land and its inhabitants with a mix of curiosity and fascination. In recent years, reports of UFO sightings above the Hockeries Mountains have captured the attention of ufologists and enthusiasts from around the world, drawing curious onlookers to the region in search of answers. Witnesses describe seeing strange lights and orbs hovering in the sky, their movements defying conventional explanation and leaving observers awestruck by their inexplicable behavior. One of the most compelling sightings of UFOs above the Hockeries Mountains occurred in 2015, when a group of hikers exploring the region reported seeing a series of bright lights descending from the heavens and hovering in the sky above. According to their accounts, the lights appeared to move in a synchronized manner, performing intricate maneuvers that seemed to defy the laws of physics. As news of the sighting spread, it sparked a flurry of speculation and debate among researchers and investigators, with theories ranging from extraterrestrial visitation to top-secret military experiments. Yet, despite extensive analysis and investigation, the true nature of the UFOs remains elusive, leaving witnesses and experts alike baffled by their mysterious presence in the skies above the Hockeries Mountains. One theory proposed by ufologists is that the UFOs seen above the Hockeries Mountains may be of extraterrestrial origin, piloted by intelligent beings from distant stars. According to this theory, the mountains' remote and inaccessible location makes them an ideal spot for extraterrestrial visitation, allowing advanced civilizations to observe and study Earth without detection. Another theory suggests that the UFOs may be a manifestation of the mountains' mystical energy, tapping into the ancient ley lines and natural forces that flow through the region. Proponents of this theory point to the mountains' long history of strange phenomena and unexplained sightings as evidence of a deeper connection between the land and the cosmos. Yet, regardless of the theories and speculation, one thing remains clear. The UFO sightings above the Hockeries Mountains continue to defy easy explanation and challenge our understanding of the universe. Whether real or imagined, these mysterious encounters serve as a potent reminder of the mysteries that lie hidden in the natural world, waiting to be discovered by those bold enough to seek them out. The strange nature of the Untersberg Mountains. The Untersberg Mountain can be found amongst the Berchtesgaden Alps on the border of the countries of Germany and Austria. Although the site is regarded as one of the prime hiking spots for travelers coming from all around the world just to bask in its scenic beauty, it appears that the mountain holds a more sinister history. Researchers often regard the Untersberg Mountain as one of the most mysterious mountains in the world due to the fact that it appears to be at the center of many different rumors that believe the mountains to hold ancient lost civilizations, the burial grounds of long-forgotten Roman emperors, and strange, never-before-seen creatures in its forests. In fact, these legends are so old that there are reports from the German regime that they were focused on uncovering the strange mysteries of the mountain and that he had funded the construction of a house on a nearby mountain to observe Untersberg through high-powered state-of-the-art telescopes and research equipment. Today, strange reports still occur as travelers will often report that during their journeys, they will suddenly lose track of time or notice that they are missing whole sections of time. In some cases, many have even claimed to suddenly wake up on a different area of the mountain, together with evidence that hours have passed since they were hiking before. People have suggested that this could be due to portals opening up that warp space and time and cause people to travel greater distances than is physically possible, whereas others believe it could be due to possible alien encounters. The sudden disappearance of Bruce Ferrin. Over 250,000 individuals are reported missing every year, with estimates of actual missing persons cases that are left unreported, pushing that total to more than an expected 300,000 cases annually. With that many reports, it is no wonder that a vast majority of these cases are left unsolved. However, every now and then there are a series of missing cases that emerge that are so peculiar they become the subject of impossible-to-explain theories. Known as the Missing 411, there appears to be a substantial number of missing persons cases relating to the disappearances of individuals from national parks. In fact, many of these missing 411 cases are believed to not be investigated too deeply, as some form of supernatural or paranormal cover-up takes place in these undisturbed locations. The Winter Mountains, located within the state of Utah, have long been a source of fascination and mystery. Nestled within the rugged terrain of the mountain range are a large number of natural lakes and groves, where thousands of nature enthusiasts and adventure seekers visit every year. However, these scenic landscapes have witnessed some of the most bizarre disappearances ever recorded over the last few decades. One such bizarre incident would occur on the 23rd of June back in 1963, when a 7-year-old boy, by the name of Bruce Ferrin, would suddenly vanish somewhere near Pyramid Lake while on a routine family outing. According to the missing persons case, it would be on the 23rd of June that the Ferrin family would decide to embark on a short trip to Pyramid Lake, situated at an elevation of approximately 9,700 feet, accompanied by his aunt, uncle, and cousins. The lake, reminiscent of Cuberant Lake, offered a serene backdrop for a day of family bonding. According to investigators, the Ferrin family would claim that at around 10 in the morning, Bruce had informed his aunt and uncle of his need to use the bathroom and decided to venture toward a nearby grove of small trees and bushes. Little did anyone suspect that this innocent act would mark the beginning of an extraordinary mystery. When Bruce failed to emerge from the grove a few minutes later, concern quickly turned into panic. Bruce Ferrin's aunt and uncle immediately initiated a search, but their efforts to find the missing 7-year-old boy would yield no results, as no evidence of Bruce being anywhere near the region was uncovered. Wasting no time, authorities were promptly notified, and a comprehensive search operation was launched. United States Forest Service personnel, county sheriff's deputies, and local search and rescue volunteers joined forces, combing through the vast nearby wilderness, calling out Bruce's name in hopes of locating the missing boy or hearing a call back. Hours of searching would turn into a day, with next to no evidence of Bruce Ferrin or his possible whereabouts discovered. Finally, the family would be overjoyed when on the afternoon of the 24th of June, nearly 20 miles away from Pyramid Lake, a search and rescue volunteer named Boyd Carpenter spotted a boy making his way down a steep trail from a set of nearby cliffs. To everyone's astonishment, it was Bruce Ferrin. The Salt Lake Tribune captured the remarkable moment with the headline, "Lad walks 20 miles, feels fine." Somehow, in a little less than 30 hours, 7-year-old Bruce had managed to travel over 20 miles and scale one of the tallest cliffs before turning back around. Searcher Boyd Carpenter himself expressed bewilderment, recounting Bruce's descent from a nearby cliff estimated to have been at least 500 feet in height, next to the trail along the North Fork of the Duchenne River. The incredible distance of Bruce's travels, combined with his young age, left search and rescue experts completely baffled. According to conventional wisdom, children between the ages of 7 and 9 are typically found within a radius of about 7 miles, within a week of their disappearance. Yet, Bruce had traversed more than double that distance in an unbelievably short period. When reunited with his parents, Bruce, hungry but unharmed, shared some details of his ordeal. Bruce recounted that during his journey he had encountered various strange animals and had relied on his instincts to stay safe. He revealed drinking water from a waterfall and seeking shelter between 2 fallen logs, where he managed to find some rest. One intriguing incident he mentioned was waking up to a deer leaping over him, illustrating the wildness and unpredictability of the environment he found himself in. However, Bruce's explanation of how he became lost or what occurred during his initial disappearance remained a mystery, as he claimed that he could not remember or explain how he ended up lost while standing in the grove. The disappearance and subsequent reappearance of Bruce Ferrin in the Winter Mountains will forever remain a strange chapter in the region's history. The Winters, with their captivating beauty and treacherous landscapes, have repeatedly witnessed these perplexing incidents. Bruce's astounding journey, covering a distance that defies logic for a 7-year-old, leaves us questioning the nature of Bruce's disappearance and the secrets that lie hidden within these mysterious mountains. Indian Army finds Yeti footprints. The elusive Yeti may have left footprints that the Indian Army claimed to have found in April 2019, close to the Makalu base camp in the Himalayas. The finding aroused intense curiosity and discussion among experts and enthusiasts alike because the Yeti's existence has long been shrouded in myth and conjecture. The Indian Army discovered tracks that were reportedly 32 by 15 inches in size, resembling human footprints but much larger, and since the prints were discovered at a height of more than 19,000 feet, it is doubtful that any known animal, including humans, could have formed them. Over the years, there have been many sightings and stories of the fabled Yeti, which is supposed to live in the Himalayan region, but despite intensive searches and investigations, no solid proof of the creature's existence has ever been discovered. The Indian Army's finding of the tracks has prompted fresh inquiries over the Yeti's existence and reignited interest in the hunt for the animal. However, scientists are still dubious, pointing out that other creatures or natural occurrences may have left their mark on the imprints. Over the years, many reports of sightings and interactions with the Yeti have been made, but only a few of these have been supported by hard proof. Presumptive sightings have occasionally been mistaken for other well-known species, such bears or big primates. Sightings have occasionally been written off as frauds or incorrect interpretations of real-world occurrences. The public's fascination in the Yeti hunt is unabated, despite the absence of hard proof. Many think that the species could be the key to discovering new information about the Himalayan region, and that the disciplines of anthropology and biology could be greatly affected by its finding. It remains to be seen whether the footprints found by the Indian Army close to the Makalu base camp are evidence of the presence of Yetis, but the finding has rekindled interest in the hunt for the mysterious animal and resurrected the controversy about the Yeti's existence. When the Indian Army came forward with the charges, many were unhappy with how they were handled, claiming that they were made fun of despite having photographic proof. According to those who study the unknown, this is one of the main reasons governments, organizations, and individuals don't come out with their sightings since, when they do, they are typically ridiculed. It's feasible that, as our knowledge of the natural world expands, we'll be able to provide a conclusive response to the subject of whether or not there are Yetis. But until then, the myth of the abominable snowman will always pique people's curiosity and remain a compelling mystery that draws people from all over the world. The mysterious disappearance of Tom Carlton in the Adirondacks. On the 12th of October back in 1993, one of the most experienced hikers, a 44-year-old man by the name of Thomas James Carlton, would suddenly be reported missing after failing to return home while on a short weekend vacation to the Adirondack Mountains. A psychologist working for the New York State prison system, Tom was an avid hiker and a highly experienced outdoorsman who was one of the most experienced members of the Adirondack Mountain Club, which specialized in climbing the very mountains he would vanish from. Most peculiar, however, there are a strange number of events and inexplicable accounts surrounding Tom's vanishing, the extensive search efforts made to locate him, and the unsettling trend of missing persons in the Adirondacks. Back during the 9th of October, Tom Carlton embarked on a solo hiking expedition, leaving his Scanatella's home early in the morning. His destination was Mount Marcy, and equipped with a teal backpack filled with essential supplies, he set off without a tent. Tom relished the solitude and challenge of venturing into remote areas, often deviating from popular trails as he had done countless times before during his history on the mountain. Unfortunately, this time, Tom Carlton would not return as expected. Growing increasingly concerned, Tom's wife, Dea, would report her husband's absence to the local authorities, including the state police, United States Forest Service, and the county sheriff's department, on the 12th of October. The response to the distress call was swift, with a collaborative effort involving the state police, New York Department of Environmental Conservation, over a dozen friends from Tom's workplace, and various search and rescue teams. The search encompassed an extensive area, covering 100 square miles and 256 miles of marked trails, as well as numerous unmarked trails and wildlife paths, making it one of the largest search efforts recorded in the area at the time. Oddly enough, as days turned into weeks, the search operation would find no evidence of the missing hiker, despite their efforts having intensified over time. By the 4th day of the search, on the 16th of October, trained search and rescue dogs and their handlers would join the quest for Tom Carlton and cover the hundreds of miles of combined distance. One particularly skilled dog named Flash managed to pick up Tom's scent from the trailhead where his car had been left. Despite their valiant efforts, as Flash attempted to follow Tom's scent, the specific trail Tom had supposedly passed over became overcrowded with impassable thicket, terrain and cliffsides. The search team accompanying Flash had to retreat due to impassable terrain, hindering their progress in locating Tom and causing the canine to become confused and lose Tom's scent. Such a strange finding led many of the volunteers wondering how it would have been possible for Tom to have passed through the area without any signs or tracks other than his scent, and worry began to spread. That perhaps his scent was scattered in the area due to a wild animal attack or other bizarre claims far too strange to have been shared. Additional unexplainable clues began to emerge when search coordinators examined hiker logbooks along the trail. They discovered 2 names that had potential information regarding Tom's whereabouts. The hikers, both from the Ithaca area, recalled encountering Tom at a lean-to on the Indian Trail Pass, approximately 4 miles away from the Adirondack Lodge. They remembered him vividly due to his distinctive teal backpack. This encounter likely took place late in the afternoon on Tom's first day on the trail, and initially followed where Flash had tracked Tom's scent. This encounter between the hikers made the sudden veering off into nearby impassable terrain all the more peculiar, however, as Tom would have been well on the trail and talked with others on the trail, making it next to impossible for him to have become lost on the hiker, as the amateur trails were wide open, popular with numerous hikers and following a steady path where Tom had initially planned to go. Instead of following the path, however, the evidence would show that Tom would suddenly veer off of the path and travel in a direction humanly impossible to have followed. Perhaps the most peculiar, despite the leads from the witness accounts, searchers faced numerous challenges in their pursuit of Tom. Sudden inclement weather further complicated their efforts, as rain and snowfall blanketed the Indian Pass area on October 9th. Not only would the weather make the environment incredibly difficult to traverse and hostile for search and rescue volunteers to stay in the area among freezing cold temperatures, but would further complicate the search due to its sudden unplanned appearance. Search and rescue volunteers seemed unable to explain how predicted stable and warm weathers could suddenly be converted into such a treacherous condition in such a short span of time. Oddly enough, during many of the disappearances of persons across the Adirondacks, sudden bad weather plays a repeating role. Although Tom had expressed his intention to utilize the lean-tos for shelter, which created the possibility that he had sought cover, search and rescue grew concerned that if Tom Carlton was lost or injured, the weather would put him at an increased chance of injury, hypothermia, or expiration. Nonetheless, extensive searches focused on Mount Marcy and Indian Pass failed to yield any concrete leads. Today, Tom Carlton's disappearance remains an unsolved mystery, despite the tireless endeavors of helicopters, canines, skilled search and rescue personnel, and dedicated volunteers. Astonishingly, not a single trace of Tom or his belongings was ever recovered. The 2 hikers in the lean-to provided the last known contact with him, leaving searchers perplexed as to what transpired afterward. Strikingly, the location where Tom's scent was traced coincided with an area where the search had to be called off due to treacherous terrain. Tom's vanishing was not an isolated incident in the Adirondack Mountains. The region has gained notoriety for a concerning cluster of missing persons cases. Mount Marcy, in particular, has witnessed a disconcerting number of disappearances. The unyielding wilderness poses significant challenges for search and rescue teams, leaving unanswered questions and haunting the families of those who have gone missing. Kevin Dye disappeared from the Elkhorn Mountain regions. Back on the 18th of July, 1971, a 9-year-old boy went missing while playing with his family outside their small cabin, located roughly 10 miles southeast of the small town of Casper, Wyoming. According to the investigators, 9-year-old Kevin Dye was outside playing ping pong with other family members and members from his local church group while vacationing near Elkhorn Creek. After playing for about an hour and the family was beginning to wind down, it would be some time at around 3 in the afternoon that Kevin Dye would accidentally hit the ping pong ball off of the table, sending it flying past the nearby brush and into the dense wilderness. Wishing to quickly resume their game, the family members would ask Kevin to go and find the ping pong ball as they heard it bounce a few yards away. The family members would later tell investigators that not only was Kevin unfamiliar with the area, and that the family had very rarely ever gone outdoors for vacationing, but that 9-year-old Kevin also suffered from an unknown neurodevelopmental disorder. It could have been due to his lack of outdoors experience or his disorder, or perhaps a combination of both. But shortly after stepping out of view of his family, Kevin would suddenly vanish while standing within an adjacent brush to the property. At first, Kevin's family was unaware that anything strange had occurred, with several members of the family patiently waiting for Kevin to find the ping-pong ball and return shortly after. It would be after roughly 5 minutes of waiting that one of the family members would call out to Kevin if he had found the missing ball, which would help to alert the rest of the family and church group members that something peculiar had truly occurred. According to the family, shortly after calling out to Kevin and failing to get a response, several family members would get up and walk in the general direction where Kevin was believed to have disappeared to, but were unable to find any sign of him or get any response while calling out his name. It would be roughly 10 minutes after he was last sighted that the family, alongside volunteer members from their local church congregation, would begin searching the nearby area and calling out to the 9-year-old boy for the next 30 minutes to an hour. Once it became apparent that Kevin Dye was completely missing from the area, Kevin's family would contact the local county sheriff's department and members from the United States Forest Service to help conduct a formal missing persons search. Before any law enforcement agencies or Forest Service could reach the area, Kevin's family and church members would already recruit another several dozen volunteers from the region after going to other small cabins located nearby and asking vacationers, tourists, hikers, experienced outdoorsmen and amateur campers to assist in searching for their son's whereabouts. It would be less than 2 hours after Kevin's disappearance that more than 200 volunteers had joined the search efforts for the missing boy, including the local sheriff's department, United States Forest Service, trained paramedic first responders, and a team of expert bloodhounds with accompanying dog handlers. The location where Kevin was last seen would be the focal point of the search and rescue operation, which was focused in a 6-mile radius from his last known location, with their attention centered around Elkhorn Creek and the Elkhorn Mountain regions. Although a 9-year-old boy can easily walk more than 6 miles in a single day, the area of Kevin's disappearance was located in a dense wilderness, resting about 8 miles southeast of the small town of Casper, Wyoming, that was nearly impossible to traverse, even for experienced hikers. This difficulty of travel left the search radius much tighter and closer than would have been originally expected for a more wide-open region. It would be at around this moment that investigators would learn of the severity of Kevin's disabilities. Kevin's parents would claim that when he was younger, Kevin had suffered from epilepsy and was prone to epileptic fits under strenuous conditions. It was also conveyed by the parents that Kevin had trouble with speaking and would typically make short vocal sounds or simple words when addressed directly. Because of Kevin's history of epilepsy and inability to vocalize loudly, investigators quickly assumed that Kevin could have been incapacitated, stuck in a semi-conscious state of disorientation and confusion, or completely unable to call out to search and rescue volunteers, even if he were within earshot, due to his sporadic muteness. This would lead investigators to immediately focus all of their attention, instead of tracking Kevin's location using the trained team of bloodhounds, rather than to fan out in random directions with the search and rescue volunteers, as he could have been easily missed. By the time that the sun had set, local newspapers would claim that more than 3,000 volunteers, composed of local visitors, nearby residents and trained search and rescue professionals, had joined the recovery efforts for 9-year-old Kevin Dye and had covered more than 10 square miles of distance from where Kevin had last been seen. It would also be at around this time that increasingly strange encounters would be made that would puzzle and confuse volunteer search and rescue teams and lead to a bizarre set of borderline unnatural claims. One of the strange claims made by search and rescue teams was that some searchers claimed to have encountered the boy who would quickly run from them or hide from them in nearby rocks before disappearing entirely. According to one of the witnesses, a small figure had been seen crouching in a bush that was located a few feet away, but when searchers got close to him and attempted to surround the area where he had been seen, no sign of the boy would be found. These bizarre encounters would continue over the course of several days as search and rescue teams continued to search for Kevin. Even more peculiar, however, 2 supposed sightings of Kevin would be made at around the same time more than 4 miles apart. By the 3rd day of the search, volunteers started to theorize that they could possibly find the boy if they left out some food for the boy at strategic spots where he had been seen. Although trained law enforcement and professional search and rescue teams focused on tracking the missing boy with the help of the bloodhounds, the amateur volunteers started leaving out food, hoping to catch the boy while he was eating. An article published in the local newspaper referred to as the Ogden Standard would write the following paragraph about an incident that occurred after a woman left a plate of food outside her cottage. Sheriff Bill Estes said that Kevin Dye was believed to have been seen again last night between 10 and 10:30. Michael R. Sullivan and his wife were driving up to their cottage in a pickup truck when their dogs began barking. Mr. Sullivan flashed his spotlight on the neighbor's house and said that he saw a human being running, adding that this guy was in a blue shirt by a stump. Though it was difficult to prove that the disappearing food was caused by Kevin Dye, a series of other bizarre events would further convince investigators that the missing 9-year-old must have been behind the strange encounters. According to reporters, when tracking nearby where food would go missing, investigators would often find primitive shelters and constructions estimated to have been large enough only to accommodate a child of Kevin's size. Several of the unknown primitive structures were described by investigators as appearing to have been basic lean-to shelters made from the boughs of surrounding pine trees and bushes. Other volunteers would describe coming across freshly made piles of stacked stones that almost appeared to have been landmarks or shrines made by the 9-year-old boy to help him find his way around a location. Using the disappearing food and the unknown structures as a way of potentially tracking the location of Kevin Dye, the volunteer search and rescue teams would lay out more food in the hopes of possibly finding and catching the missing boy. After several days of using this strategy, searchers began to worry that they were making next to no progress in actually finding the young boy and decided to take a more systematic approach and travel in grids over vast distances, making it impossible for the missing child to elude rescuers. Despite their best efforts, by the 10th day of the search, no sign of Kevin Dye was ever recovered. It would also be on the 10th day that the search and rescue operations would take an unexplainable turn. Although never explained, it would appear that the group of search and rescue volunteers would become increasingly superstitious of the unknown structures and the nature of the disappearance of the boy. This growing superstition would cause Kevin's father, a man by the name of Mr. Philip Dye, to hold a prayer rally at the location of where Kevin had last been seen. The local newspapers would claim that Mr. Philip Dye worked as the treasurer for the Christ United Methodist Church, the local church that had been vacationing with the family at the time of Kevin's disappearance. Due to his position at the church, Mr. Philip Dye organized a prayer group that would bless the search and rescue volunteers, as well as travel through the area praying for Kevin's return and to ward off any evil superstitions. Oddly enough, shortly after the end of the prayer rally, it would be on the 10th day of the search that Kevin Dye would soon be recovered. According to the official investigation reports, it would be on the 28th of July, at around 8:30 in the morning, that a group of volunteers would find Kevin Dye lying at the northern edges of Elkhorn Creek, located near the base of Elkhorn Mountain, completely unconscious and in a very weakened state. Tapping the boy several times to see if he was still alive, Kevin Dye would soon awaken and look over at the search and rescue volunteers and offer a weak smile. The volunteers would later tell investigators that after having been prodded several times, Kevin had woken up, crawled over to the stretcher that the volunteers had brought, and then fell back to sleep as the team carefully began to carry him out of the wilderness on a sloped 2.5-mile hike. Shortly after reaching the rest of the group, Kevin would be examined by a healthcare professional who would make special note to notice that though one of Kevin's shoes was missing, his foot did not appear to have been severely injured in any way. Additionally, the healthcare professional appeared to take note of a series of scratches found across Kevin's arms and face, but with no other major injuries anywhere else on his body. Less than an hour later, the boy would be admitted to the local hospital and monitored by a doctor. It would be at around this time that investigators would come to find that Kevin had lost over 25 pounds in the 10 days that he was missing, with the hospital indicating that Kevin had not had anything to eat since before he had disappeared. The medical examiner also believed that Kevin would not have survived for another day, and that his sudden rapid weight loss would have put him at a conservative estimate of around 7,000 calories burned every day, or around 5,000 calories burned through pure exercise per day. This finding would directly contradict many of the investigators' claims that Kevin had been spotted eating food from porches or digging through trash cans for leftovers. Additionally, the excessive weight loss would make many question as to how Kevin could have continued evading detection without succumbing to exhaustion and extreme muscle fatigue. Curious as to what had happened, investigators would wait a week for Kevin to recover before asking questions about his ordeal. After the week, Kevin would only say a few words and seemed generally uninterested in the affair, offering no information about what exactly happened during those missing 10 days. Investigators would later claim that due to Kevin's history of seizures, they believed that the 9-year-old boy could have entered a semi-conscious state while traveling through the woods, causing him to travel for hours at a time in random directions, unsure of where he was at and without knowledge of how long he had been walking for. The mysterious Michael and Makana von Gortler incident. On the 22nd of June back in 2011, a father and daughter would suddenly vanish when going on a hike to the summit of Mount Missouri, located in the state of Colorado. Although the two experienced hikers would reach the summit at around 14,000 feet, their bodies would tell a completely different story when investigators would conduct a thorough investigation into the matter. According to the missing persons report, 53-year-old Michael von Gortler and his daughter, 20-year-old Makana von Gortler, would leave their home in Boulder, Colorado on the 14th of June to spend the summer going on a series of hiking and climbing trails together over the span of about a week. Michael, who worked as an emergency room physician in the city of Boulder, Colorado, had often visited the nearby trails and mountain ranges over the years and had become quite an experienced outdoorsman, hiker and climber across the many Colorado mountain ranges. Additionally, Michael's daughter Makana, who studied out of the University of Colorado, majoring in ecology and evolutionary biology, would often spend her entire spring, summer and winter vacations between school going on long hiking and camping trips with her father to get pictures of the natural wildlife and ecology of the local area. Makana would also be considered by many close friends and family as having been extremely experienced in both hiking and climbing, and both Makana and her father were in excellent physical shape at the time of their disappearance. It was later uncovered by investigators that Michael and Makana would spend the majority of their week-long camping and hiking trip at the father's second home. Michael's second home was a small summer house located in the town of Buena Vista, roughly 150 miles west of Boulder. It was also believed that Michael and Makana would spend that first week together, traveling to the town of Telluride and attending the Bluegrass Festival before returning back home to the summer house in Buena Vista in order to make several preparations. It would be there that the two hikers would spend several days planning their trip to Mount Missouri, including acquiring several updated maps to help plan their routes, purchase and replace new equipment for their climbs, and stock up on extra emergency gear in the event of sudden bad weather conditions or any unforeseen issues. Although their precautions may have seemed too cautious, considering the fact that the two only had plans to camp around the base of Mount Missouri for a few days and then hike the summit of the mountain before returning back to the base of the mountain on a short day trip, Michael Gortler was known for being over-prepared when it came to hiking and camping journeys. Prior to their departure, Makana would send a text to her longtime boyfriend, a man by the name of Paul Casimir, that the two were headed up to a mountain trail with a summit measured at being 14,000 feet, but that her phone had been left on the roaming setting due to their cellular network connection being out of range, and that she would be unable to text or call as she wanted to avoid using data as her data plan was more expensive when it came to using roaming data. The text she had sent would later be confirmed with a local news article which would publish the text to the boyfriend. The text would read as follows: "I just got back to Buena Vista with my dad. I left my phone on roaming so I can't talk. We had a great time and we're going to try a 14 tomorrow. I'll be able to see you in a few days. I've missed you too." The number would be a reference to the height of the mountain, with Makana's cryptid message meaning that the two would be attempting to climb a summit estimated around 14,000 feet. The night before their disappearance, on the 22nd of June, at around 12:23 in the morning, Makana would send one last text to her boyfriend Paul, which would state the following: "We're hiking Mount Missouri tomorrow, staying the night here, then driving back the 23rd. I will help my dad pack the next day, so I can see you on the 25th, and we can celebrate whatever month we're in now." After a few days passed, Paul would fail to get any reply or message back from either Michael or Makana, and would begin to worry that something strange had happened. By the 24th, Paul would grow increasingly disturbed by the lack of reply that he would reach out to Makana's mother, Michael's wife, Mrs. Dea von Gortler, and ask her when the two were expected to return back to Boulder and why the two were not returning his texts or phone calls. At first, Dea would reassure Paul that the two were most likely taking their time coming back from the trip and would return sometime on the 24th of June or the 25th, but that she would reach out to Michael and Makana to check up on them. After spending a few hours trying to reach her husband and daughter and failing to get in contact with them, Mrs. Dea von Gortler would contact the Chaffee County Sheriff's Department to report the two as missing and to do a checkup on their whereabouts. At first, the search for Michael and Makana went slowly, as investigators first wanted to confirm that the two were still in the area of Mount Missouri and not back at their Buena Vista summer home. After driving an estimated 3 hours to the summer house, Mrs. Dea von Gortler would confirm that her husband and daughter were missing, and after several hours of searching, the Chaffee County Sheriff's Department would locate and find Michael von Gortler's vehicle parked at the Mount Missouri parking lot located at the base of the mountain. Almost immediately upon finding the vehicle, the Sheriff's Department would organize one of the largest ground and aerial searches conducted in the state, alongside the local military and other law enforcement organizations. On the first day of the search, the nearby military base would utilize a state-of-the-art Black Hawk helicopter to help carry search and rescue volunteers near the summit of the 3 surrounding 14,000-foot mountains. While ferrying people, the military would also utilize thermal imaging cameras and other sensitive equipment in the hopes of locating the missing 2 hikers within the first few days. Over 40 search and rescue volunteers would be brought to the summits of the mountains, an estimated 12 volunteers per peak, and would help to cover over 1,000 feet in elevation that first day, but no sign of the missing hikers were found. Investigators were worried that their search efforts may have been in vain, as the area of the mountains and their summits were completely barren and held very little foliage, making it difficult to explain how it was that aerial support was unable to spot the brightly clothed pair from the sky anywhere along the route. Even more strange, an article published in the local news would also claim that by the 8th day of the search for the missing father and daughter, it was believed that search and rescue volunteers, the Sheriff's Department, United States National Forest Rangers, and the nearby military base had covered more than 800 square miles of terrain, both by ground and air, and were unable to find any sign of the missing pair. It would not be until the 10th day of the search that investigators would finally recover the missing father and daughter, when the search helicopter was in the middle of depositing another group of search and rescue volunteers on the summit of Mount Missouri. According to the helicopter pilot, as he was descending onto the summit, the pilot claimed that he saw something incredibly unusual in the forest area directly below their passing location. Although the pilot would never describe what he saw that was considered distinctly unusual, rumors from search and rescue volunteers claimed that he saw what looked like a large figure in the area that seemed difficult to explain. Unsure of what it was that was seen, the pilot would send the volunteers into the area where they would find 2 individuals. According to the volunteers, they were not immediately identified as belonging to Michael and Makana, as they were horribly injured and disfigured beyond recognition. Though the pair would later be confirmed as having been the missing father and daughter, there was initially no declaration of their identities, and several other bizarre events would take place that would make missing 411 investigators suspicious as to the nature of the recovery. A group of search and rescue volunteers would claim that the individuals were found in a forested area far from any ledges or cliffs, somewhere around the 12,000-foot elevation mark on the mountain. Another group would claim that the individuals were found lying atop an open field of grass around the similar elevation mark. However, despite these conflicting stories, no confirmation of either account would be made, leading many missing 411 investigators with the suspicions that a bizarre cover-up had taken place. It would take another few days before the coroner could confirm the identity of the injured pair as belonging to Michael and Makana. Even more peculiar, the coroner and sheriff's department worked together in order to provide an explanation of the cause of the passing of Michael and Makana, as both the coroner and sheriff's department were confused as to the exact location where they were found and the exact nature of their demise. The Chaffee County Sheriff's Department would hold a press conference on the 5th of July, claiming that the discovery of where Michael and McCanna were found came as a total shock to the investigators. It was hard to understand how any accident could have occurred, as the von Gortlers had been at a high elevation and appeared to have been suffering from injuries inconsistent with a fall. Additionally, the Sheriff's Department would confirm that the weather had been exceptionally good at the time of their expected demise, as there was no measured wind, no clouds, and no sudden weather shifts that could have led to any accidents for the pair. In all considerations, the day of their disappearance was a perfect day for a short hike to the summit and back down. The most confusing statements would come from several interviewed searchers on a live broadcast, which would claim that it was believed that the pair had to have reached the summit and fallen while they were descending the summit along a hiking trail. The searchers would claim that less than 200 feet from the summit, the pair fell. The Chaffee County Sheriff Pete Palmer would tell reporters that it was difficult to confirm the theory, as the distance and placement of the body was both too far and in too awkward of a location for the pair to have fallen from only 200 feet from the summit. The sheriff would also provide the statement to the news reporters, saying that they are not exactly sure where they were when they fell, as none of the information they had seemed to match up. In one report, searchers would claim they believed that the pair had fallen 200 feet from the summit while descending. Another report would claim that the bodies of the father and daughter were found in a densely forested area at the 12,000-foot elevation point, and a third report would claim that the pair were found much closer to the summit, laid out on grass. Even more peculiar, the coroner's office would claim that the damage and injuries of the pair were consistent only with a fall estimated to have been at least 1,000 feet in height at a 60-degree grade, which would have been impossible to have suffered from if only a few hundred feet from the summit or at the 12,000-foot elevation point. Chaffee County Coroner Randy Ametis would also make several increasingly bizarre statements to reporters, claiming that the only thing known for certain was that Dr. Michael von Gortler and his daughter, McCanna von Gortler, had both died from blunt force trauma injuries to the head and neck at almost the exact same time. At first, the coroner believed there was evidence of burn or scorch marks, but would later confirm that there was no indication of injuries caused from lightning, a strange statement that seemed both unwarranted and inconsistent. Randy Ametis would also confirm that due to the decomposition and condition of the individuals, it was believed that the two had died on the 22nd of June, the same day that the hike had initially begun. Despite the inconsistent information and data, the coroner's office would confirm that their passing was officially declared as an accident, and it was believed that no crime had been committed. The coroners would provide relatives of the von Gortler with the explanation that the two had most likely been blown off the cliff from a significant gust of wind, despite reports of clear skies and low winds. One of the most difficult to explain aspects of the coroner's report, however, were the lack of injuries to other parts of the bodies. According to the searchers, Michael and McCanna had to have fallen at least 1,000 feet to explain their injuries and location. At the height and steep grade, injuries would be expected to be seen across their bodies, including small and large scrapes, bruises, torn clothes, and small and large rocks around their remains. The coroner's statements, however, only included claims and descriptions that Michael and McCanna had died from blunt force trauma to their head and neck, without making any other statements about injuries to the torso, legs, or other regions of the body. Given the fact that Michael and McCanna, who were experienced hikers and climbers, were believed to have been on an easy trail at the time of their fall, Chaffee County Sheriff's Officer Pete Palmer would express disbelief at the mystery of their passing. The search and rescue volunteers would also express confusion surrounding the location that the bodies were recovered. It seemed impossible to explain how the individuals were not found until the 10th day of the search in an area so close to the summit, and believed to have been checked several times over by volunteers during the first week of the operation. Helicopters had also been flying in and around the area every single day since the disappearance, and not a single person had seen the pair in a location that the two were expected to have been hiking in. To this day, the mysterious passing of Michael and McCanna von Gortler have been the subject of many theories and continue to be regarded as one of the most mysterious and unexplainable accidents recorded in the Colorado mountains.